Deepwoken's legendary weapons. Weapons forged with the immense power of the song and attunements, capable of breathing the song and ether like a living person, only as a weapon. Most of these weapons were created during the golden era of the song known as the Cataclysm. The legendary weapons were all designed to be effective killing devices. Not one of these was created without the intent to kill behind it, with most of them being designed for either war or the ability to match the strength of other factions. In-universe, only one of each of them exists, but in-game there are hundreds because it'd be unfair if only one existed. I'm live on Twitch, come watch me on Twitch. I'm playing Devil May Cry 5 on Twitch. I've already played 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm playing 5 now, so come watch me on Twitch. I'm starting it right now on Twitch. Now that you understand what legendary weapons are, let's get straight into it. First up is the Curved Blade of Winds, one of the older legendary weapons forged in the era of the Cataclysm. It was made and created with the Gale Breath attunement imbued into it. This weapon was made by the first Gale Breathers when the attunement was pretty recently discovered. That's all the real lore that it has behind it, and this weapon doesn't go too in detail on its creation, probably because it was made before the drownings, and most of that finer history was lost with the tides. Next is the Crypt Blade. This weapon is quite interesting, as it isn't necessarily made with the Shadow attunement the same way that the Curved Blade of Winds was. The Crypt Blade was made with the souls of the last people who survived the Great Drowning of the Tides. It was likely made by the Ministry as an experiment, and the reason why it's made with Shadowcast is because the souls of the people used for the weapon were experiencing overwhelming amounts of negative emotion, which is what Shadowcast as an attunement thrives off of. The agony and pain of these twisted souls resulted in the shadow strength of the sword. Now this isn't exactly lore, but the original Crypt Blade was a very half-baked weapon, which the original Crypt Blade when it first came out both used the same model and description as the Darksteel Greatsword. They just put particles over it, so you know that they literally just copy and pasted the weapon and put it into the game with particles and like different stats. Next is the Grand Sudaruska, my favorite legendary weapon as far as lore goes. The weapon comes from Sudaruska the Unbroken. She was the original defender of the island of Minatirsa before it was taken over by the Ministry. When it was amidst being taken over by them, they had eventually managed to nearly kill her, and in her final dying breath she infused her soul in the axe, which became the Grand Sudaruska, giving birth to a sentient weapon with the will to kill and destroy the Ministry and their operatives. Now along with that, she also has various voice lines she speaks when killing contractors and Ministry related NPCs. This is also one of the two weapons which uses the in-game language of runes. Deepwoken does have its own language, which is very underutilized, being the runes known as Elder Firthark runes, found on weapons such as this one, which reads Frostdraw and Fimble Winter. Fun fact about this weapon, but if you are a contractor, it will refuse to bind with you because it doesn't like contractors, so it won't let you use it if you're in the Ministry. The next weapon is going to be the second set of weapons utilizing these runes, being the various Heroes' Blades, which all use these runes to have the name of their attunement splayed upon them. Sadly, this language, or at least translatable versions of it, don't exist much throughout the game, and outside of these weapons, it doesn't really exist. The actual lore of the Heroes' Blades is based on the 5 heroes of the naturalistic attunements: Gale Breath, Frostdraw, Flame Charm, Thundercall, and Shadowcast. These 5 heroes protected the world of Lumen as their life goal, but when they no longer had the strength to, they imbued their souls into the weapons, giving power to them to pass them down to a worthy hero. There is a little bit of hidden lore around the 5 heroes though. So during the quest you do with the pillar for Saintsworn, all the pillars except for one of the heroes gives you basic dialogue involving their element and attunement except for one. The Shadowcast hero, instead of telling you about Shadowcast, instead says something completely unrelated. Once I stood with the 5, a hero amongst them, but loyalty, it's a fragile thing. Betrayal, it's as inevitable as the night. Which does imply he might have been betrayed in some way by the other heroes, potentially forced to imbue his soul into the sword against his will. But that's just my theory, as the game doesn't offer any extra insight on this. Next is the Storm's Eye, crafted by the gunsmith Rosen of the Summer Company. Rosen is the leader of the Summer Company, but you would know that if you watched the faction lore video. This weapon was created when the Summer Company found out how much power was held within the Kirsa medallions. So they stole them from the Ignition Union shipments to the overworld, and this weapon was drafted. And when the schematics were shown to gunsmith Rosen, he reportedly burst into laughter before approving it, meaning he likely found it comedic that their new secret weapon came from their enemies being the Ignition Union, who were already stealing from them at this point. Other than that, this weapon isn't too well versed in the lore. Next is the Flareblade Kamas. These weapons were created by the Chaser when he was serving and training under the Second Prophet of the Ministry to learn Bloodrend. He doesn't actually use these weapons despite creating them with the Bloodrend attunement though. This isn't lore, but I think the weapons were just an early concept or draft made by the Chaser, and the reason why we never got a better version was because he never gets to finish it, being stuck in the time loop, because they kinda suck. Next up is the Light's Final Toll. This weapon was created as the winner of a fan artist competition and added to the game. The weapon was inherently malicious to the user, however. It was created by a grammar to honor those who died in the Great Drownings, with the bell sounds it makes were made to sound like the fading song within a person. The weapon itself begins to tether itself to your soul, corrupting your connection with the afterlife and causing insanity within its user as a result. The weapon itself is a constant reminder of the death that follows you, and the realization resulted in the people who created it attempting to destroy it by throwing it into the sea, where it would sink into the depths before it is found by the player. Next is the Vortex Echo. This weapon is made from a small vortex which carries the energy of Etheron's eternal gale. It allows you to use this power from Etheron to channel it to distort space and time around you to varying degrees, which is primarily used as a way to reset your in-game cooldowns, which is likely done by resetting your body or the aether within your body to a previous point in time. It's kind of hard to explain because, yeah, it resets your mantra cooldowns, but what it doesn't do is affect your health or anything else like that, despite the fact that it's probably resetting your body to a previous point. It's weird. Next is the Soul Thorn. This weapon takes its energy from the Moon's Eye, and it was said to have that energy from the Moon's Eye siphoned from a celestial who came down from the Celestial Kingdom, before making that energy into the sword known as the Soul Thorn. Now, this weapon is said to have drawn its previous owner insane because the energy taken from the Moon's Eye is soul-like in nature. The previous owner, known as the Moonlight Prince, was driven insane from the souls of the Moon's Eye energy talking to him, which is likely when he abandoned the weapon and was never seen or heard from again, potentially dying. Then we have the Eye of Malice, and this weapon doesn't have many lore implications because it doesn't make sense. The weapon is said to be fashioned out of the remains of the Doom of Caranthil, aka the World Serpent, which you kill in-game, right? Except two things. The weapon drops from the monster itself and isn't crafted, which doesn't make sense because it's stated to be made from the remains of the monster, but it drops from the monster after the player kills it, and it isn't crafted. So literally, how the fuck does this thing exist? Was it crafted and then sent back in time using the Vortex Echo? It doesn't make sense. Other weapons are crafted by the player, like the Vortex Echo, but then this one isn't when it's explicitly stated to be crafted out of the monster that we kill, but nobody gives it to you, and you yourself don't make it. Fuck this weapon and its shitty lore. Next is the Imperial Staff. This weapon belonged to and was created by the 100 Legionnaires, and it was stated to have the power to wipe entire towns off the map with one swing. This weapon's lore is pretty underdeveloped, not having any sort of statement on how it was lost, or who its original users were, or even how it was created. So on to the Guiding Star. The Guiding Star is a legendary weapon which comes from the Children of Neve. The Guiding Star is used for ritualistic purposes primarily by them, where they give it to newcomers to prove themselves by hunting a wolf in a forest completely blindfolded. It's said that the bow may speak to you, offering advice and words of encouragement. The bow is celestial in nature, and although not confirmed, it is believed to be a gift from the Celestial Neve, and the voice heard from the bow could also be hers, as it was given to the Children of Neve, who worship her. Next is the Fractine. This weapon used to be a whole sword, but it was bound to the soul of its original wielder a bit too tightly, because when his soul went, the sword tried to go too, resulting in it shattering and breaking into two pieces, but having the bond of a soul allowed those shattered pieces to remain together. Now the weapon can be used to break off its blade and reattach it quite easily. Now some people may think this could apply to the same thing as Railblade. For those of you who don't remember, I pointed out in a previous video maybe a year ago that the Railblade should be enchantable because it's not imbued with an attunement or power of some sort like strength or fortitude because it only scaled off the heavy stat. The devs in response made it enchantable, which is really funny. Now while this weapon scales off intelligence, that's not why it isn't enchantable, because the weapon itself indeed carries the power of a soul, making it imbued with that and being unable to wield enchants. Next is Pleatsky's Inferno, and this weapon was created using obsidian and magma rocks by the Terrans. The lava floral designs within it are also stated to be commonly used by Terrans actively after Pleatsky's ascent to the third layer, implying it is possible that he is, or at least was, a Terran before ascending. The weapon itself was given to him as a gift, but is now given to pathfinders who wish to walk down the same route as Pleatsky did and practice with the worshippers of flame. And next is the Rosenthal Flame. This weapon doesn't have or need extensive lore. It was created by the gunsmith Rosen of the Summer Company, and that's about it. On to the Pyre Keeper. Isli's Pyre Keeper is a set of two weapons, a greatsword and a dagger, by the names of Callow and Verdant. The weapon itself was created and used by the Hive group, with the second Great Lord of Hive creating it utilizing the Flames of Life and bestowing it upon the third Great Lord, who would never use it due to the Hive's mostly pacifistic tendencies, preferring to let robots kill and defend for them, resulting in the weapon eventually getting passed down to an unknown person named Isli, who would use it for its intended purpose, killing. We really don't have any lore on Yusli, and if there is any, please let me know in the comments below, because I could not find anything. Next is the Winter, which is possibly one of, if not the oldest legendary weapon in the entire game, having been forged pre-Cataclysm and within Layer 2 of the Depths by the Kyr's people who lived there before their city was ruined by Etheron and its scion. The spears the mind-controlled and non-controlled Kyr's people use are actually supposed to be equal to the Winter in, you know, everything. But they aren't, because the people making them are barely husks anymore, having fallen under mind control, resulting in much cruder weapons. Back when, maybe 1400 years ago or whatever, the Winter used to be the standard weapon for them. The next weapon is the Hailbreaker. Now this weapon was created by the divers utilizing frost as a way to counter the Railblade, which was recently developed by the Ignition Union, giving them a combat edge over the divers. This weapon was created to pierce enemies and then immediately freeze their insides, killing them, and it actually came out stronger than the Railblade, and unlike the Railblade, requires the attunement of usage to utilize it, because it doesn't necessarily emit its own ice the way the Railblade has a flame emitter on it. Next is the Wraithclaw. This weapon is forged from the souls of the dead along with the Gale attunement, which is why it has its spectral appearance. It is said that the voices of the dead are carried by the winds, so they intertwine to create a weapon. This weapon was pretty much created by exercising angry ghosts, and these ghosts were so angry that they would give birth to a weapon with the intent to kill in their final moments of afterlife, I guess. And next up we have the Deep Spindle. This weapon wasn't forged. The reason for its weirdly spindly appearance is because the weapon was instead grown like a tree using Shadowcast magic, resulting in a weapon made of shadow, which would harden into a point at the end of all the intertwined, I don't know, branches. The person who created it did so in the depths out of curiosity for the power of what I can only assume that was like a black pit that they found, which was brimming with shadow energy, and they're like, huh, let me grow a tree in there. Now, creating the weapon resulted in their insanity and inevitable death, where it was then abandoned and never used until found by the player, meaning that the player is canonically the only person who would ever wield this weapon. Next up is the Iron Requiem. Now, this weapon is reverse engineered because it was stolen from Summer Company weapon shipments. So basically, the Summer Company were shipping a bunch of these on a ship, probably to their troop or whatever, and because, you know, the Ignition Union loves stealing from them, they stole a shipment and had these in it, and then they used their Iron Singers, which they trained through Adar, who's the Iron Sing trainer. You can learn more about him in the Attunements lore video, but they use him to reverse engineer this weapon and mass produce them for themselves, which is actually pretty cool. And next up is the Ignition Deep Crusher. This is a club and a sword, which is really cool. This is actually one of my favorite weapon designs, but it's made out of ferrofluid, which is supposed to be a semi-solid and also like semi-aqueous liquid metal, which can harden in response to a stimulus of some sort. So you can grip it and turn it into a hammer, and then you can release it and then put less pressure on it, which would turn it into a sword in the one-handed stance, which is pretty cool. Now, this weapon was also created by the Ignition Union, of course, because they love their Iron Singer weapons. But yeah, this weapon doesn't have actually that much lore, which is kind of sad. Next up are the Maestro Evangard weapons, all having a unique story. The Pale Briar was created by the Star Kindred Church of Cultists, who dipped this staff in the ichor made of celestial blood and viscera, resulting in its weird angelic properties and critical. Maestro got it during an expedition with the Hundreds Legion to wipe out the Star Kindred Church because they're evil cultists. The cerulean thread was the former weapon of the fourth prophet of the ministry, who is now the current Lord Regent. Before he was taken over Etris, he met Maestro, resulting in them getting into a duel where he was killed by Maestro, resulting in him going into the depths, and of course easily escaping because he's still pretty strong. But when he was killed, Maestro managed to take the cerulean threaded dagger off of his body before leaving. And then there's the Purple Cloud. Both of those two weapons have so much story behind them, and all we know about the Purple Cloud is that it may have a soul and it will likely kill you if drawn for too long, kind of like the Mortal Blades from Sekiro. This weapon itself really doesn't have that much lore, despite the previous ones having a lot, and I really wish the developers would put more into it, because this one is just kind of half-baked. The next weapon is the Red Death, which is pretty new, and it was used by the Bloodrend Shadowcast users, because it is a Bloodrend Shadowcast legendary, and it's supposed to be used by the Ministry Heart Spillers, which is supposed to be used for interrogation tactics. So they'll interrogate people using this weapon, and then the main purpose of the weapon is that when you kill someone with it, it does not leave any trace of their organic remains or their like ether traces. So when you kill someone with it, they just disappear. Now, being a blood weapon, it was probably created by the Second Prophet, especially because the Blood Spillers are employed by the Second Prophet primarily, and they serve him. So it could have just been created by him, and then they use it now. Which is pretty interesting, because the weapon itself also rejects organic oils and fluids, so even if you stab someone with it, it won't get covered in blood, it just gets rid of everything. And the next weapon is the Wheel and Woe, which is pretty new, and honestly, God, I hate this weapon. First of all, the name is so stupid, Wheel and Woe. I'm sorry, that's opinion-based, we're going over lore here. Now, basically, these weapons were It's two weapons, they're twin spears, and they were made from a single massive piece of umbral obsidian by twin shadowcasters. So it's two weapons originally used by two people, because they weren't wielding two spears by one person. Which, I guess since it was created by twins and they made vows involving these weapons, part of the lore is that the wielder of one of them can always sense where the other one is. So if you have one spear, you always know where the other one is, or the user is. And it also has a weird vow of harmony on them, so despite the fact that you may not be able to fight using two spears effectively, if you have both of these weapons, you gain an innate level of knowledge, which allows you to effectively fight using two spears. It's very cool, actually. Anyway, that is all the legendary weapon lore that we have. If I didn't cover a weapon, it's because it's not legendary. So I know people are going to be commenting, oh, you forgot this weapon, that weapon. Like the rail blade, that's not a legendary weapon. Anyway, shoutouts to YouTube members Green, Brick, Pickle, Goobka, Highcard, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Check me out on Twitch. I'm going to be streaming Devil May Cry 5 and some other stuff pretty soon after I beat it. Have an amazing day. I love you all, and goodbye.